Okay, time to answer the questions Ivan asked me. Um, he asked first how it is that I think that Jesus can be part of catesis and yet not be created himself. Catesis being the Greek word generally translated creation. And can I show him any examples in any Jewish literature where you must be where something that is part of catesis isn't created? I'll answer the second question first, or the second part of the question. Here's Proverbs 8:22 from the Septuagint. The Lord made me, or ekitsin me, at the beginning of His works. He established me before time was in the beginning, before He made the earth. So to go to the Hebrew, I have to bring it up here. Uh, the Hebrew rendering about wisdom in Proverbs 8:22. I want to show you where the Hebrew comes, what the Hebrew comes from. Um, okay, I was set up, or better still, uh, Nasak, I was poured out. I was poured out from everlasting. Now, from everlasting, long duration, antiquity, purity, forever, everlasting, evermore. Um, and I'll point out that it's the exact same thing that is in Psalm 92, that God, for the mountains were brought forth, wherever thou hast formed the earth, or the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Um, God is from everlasting, and wisdom, which God at Ktisen, from as the beginning of His ways, wisdom was poured out from where? From God, from everlasting. So that is one example that I think I can give that um, wisdom was, something that was at Katison and yet not truly created, being that it was being poured out by God from everlasting. Um, and I will point out once again, and this is from my new friend Sam Shimonian and his website, answeringislam.org, where he's doing an article about origin and how the cultists misuse origin. And this is from the Henri Krauzel book, Origin, where it talks about it. Likewise, Colossians 1:15 calls Christ the firstborn of all catesis, thus including him in the catesis. That is why these words do not have for origin the strict meaning of creating, that is, from making out of nothing. Genesis 1 and 2, chapters 1 and 2, following the LXS, Poein denotes the creation of spiritual natures, saying that of material ones. So, catesin applies to all of God's production by generation or creation. If you understand catesin as that which God produces, you don't necessarily, Trinitarians do not necessarily have a problem with putting Jesus in the group of catesis and have him be a catesin. And it goes on where he quotes from the letter of Pope Dionysius, the expression "ekatesen," as you well know, does not have a single sense. That's from Against the Sabellians, chapter 2. Now he adds, the Arian quarrel will necessitate a stricter terminology. Um, in other words, the Arians narrowed down the concept of catesis to that which God makes out of nothing and not that which God produces. So, the classic pre-Nicene understanding of catesis is that which God produces. Uh, and that's why a lot of church fathers who declared that Christ was eternal also, applied Proverbs 8:22 to him and, put him in the group of catesis. So, and I can name Origen, Clement of Alexandria, Tertullian, Irenaeus as some who I can give examples of. So there's that one. Next question, because Psalm 45, 6 and 7 is about a Jewish king, and God calls the Jewish king, the Father calls the Jewish king God, and God is obviously a different God ontologically than the Jewish king. Why then is the application of this, why then, if since this verse is applied to Jesus, why then does that not make Jesus a different ontological God than the Father? Well, I want to point out, is that question flawed? Is this verse in Psalm 45 about a Jewish king, or is it not, in fact, about the product of the line of Jewish kings, the Messiah? This is from John Gill's exposition of the entire Bible. It's on studylight.org. I must point out, Gill is excellent. He's not that well known, but man, he comments not just verse by verse, but portions of verses. And this is his commentary on verse 45, chapter 45, verse 7, where he says, the Targum in the King of Spain's Bible begins this verse thus, but thou, King Messiah, because thou lovest righteousness, hatest wickedness. So in the Targums, apparently this was regarded as a verse about the Messiah, and not about a Jewish king per se. So God is calling the Messiah God. Now, is the Messiah a different ontological God than God? Well, that's what we're having this discussion about. Even if what you were saying is the case, why does this not mean that Jesus is a different God ontologically than Jehovah? Well, this is the point I made, and it really wasn't touched upon much. The Father is calling the Son Lord. And as I said in Hebrews 1:10, the next verse after Hebrews 1:8 and 9, you call a person Lord in Scripture for two reasons. That person, you are subordinate to that person, and the Father is not subordinate to the Son. Or that person is Jehovah God. Why then is the Father calling the Son Lord? This verse is kind of the tiebreaker. So there's that. And then lastly, Ivan, you had asked about the whole, can I show a time when agency wasn't a mainstream concept? It's not so much I have a problem with agency per se, in calling the agent the name of the principal and treating the agent as the principal and the agent speaking for the principal. We could have a hearty little discussion about whether or not the angel of the Lord in the burning bush was in fact Yahweh or an agent of Yahweh. You could have a nice discussion about that. What I was mainly concerned about are some of these notions found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the Melchizedek scroll, where they're applying a verse that was unique to Jehovah God to a top angel. I don't know if you could find these notions elsewhere in Judaism. Applying things that are unique only to Jehovah God to an agent in that regard. Even if you can, for argument's sake, even if this was just mainstream Judaism, it is still possible that Jesus was coming to earth and making claims of unique deity. Even if this was something that happened within Judaism. And again, that's what this conversation is about. Claims of eternality. And a created agent of Jehovah does not make claims of eternality as he did in John 8:58. Things like that. And I'm going to touch on some of that in the final statement. But that's basically the answer I can give you about the whole agency thing in ancient Hebrew culture. So that's it. All right, see ya.